An AI system just produced a research paper from scratch. No human wrote a word of it. The system came up with the idea, searched the literature, wrote the code, ran the experiments, and drafted the full manuscript in LaTeX. A team from Sakana AI in Tokyo, the University of British Columbia, and Oxford submitted 3 of the system's papers to an ICLR 2025 workshop through double-blind peer review. One scored a 6.33, above the acceptance threshold. It passed. Now, the team had agreed with ICLR up front to withdraw the paper after review. It was never going to be published, but the score was real. A fully AI-generated paper had cleared peer review at a recognized machine learning workshop, and the research describing how they built this system published in Nature. To understand how wild that is, think about what research normally looks like. You start with an idea. Then you spend months reading hundreds of papers to make sure nobody's done it already. Months and designing your experiments. Months running them. Months writing everything up. Then you submit. Wait another 3 to 6 months for peer review, and there's a decent chance you get rejected and have to start over from scratch. A single paper can easily take 2 to 3 years. A PhD takes 5 to 7, and it's not cheap. Publishing open access in a top journal can cost over $10,000 just in processing fees. That's before salaries, compute, lab access, or years of tuition. The AI scientist produces a complete paper for roughly $15 to $20 in compute costs. The entire pipeline, from idea to finished manuscript, runs without a single human in the loop. So how does it actually work? How do you compress years of graduate research into a single automated pipeline? The system is called the AI scientist, and it works in 5 stages: ideation, literature review, experimentation, paper writing, and peer review. Every stage is fully autonomous. You give it a research direction, and it handles everything else. It starts by brainstorming. You feed it something broad, like improve the efficiency of diffusion models. From that single prompt, it generates a set of candidate ideas. Then it checks each one against Semantic Scholar, a massive academic search engine, to figure out if someone's already done it. Anything that's not novel gets cut. The surviving ideas move on to literature review, where the system reads the relevant papers, pulls out the key findings, and builds the foundation for its experiments. Now here's where it gets clever. The first version of this system followed a straight line. One idea, one experiment, one result. It needed a human-written template to tell it exactly what to do. If the template didn't cover your problem, you were stuck. Version 2 threw all of that out. It replaced the linear pipeline with something called best first tree search. Instead of following one path, the system branches. It explores multiple experimental directions at the same time. 3 workers run in parallel, each pursuing a different branch. Think of it like a chess engine. It doesn't just play one move. It evaluates hundreds of possible futures and picks the best path forward. Except here, each move is a different experiment. The system tries one approach, checks the results, and decides whether to keep going or try something completely different. After each step, it scores every branch, kills the dead ends, and pours resources into the most promising ones. When a branch fails, and plenty of them do, it prunes that path and moves on. When something works, it digs deeper. The whole thing is self-correcting. Bad results don't kill the process. They just redirect it. Once the winning path is found, the system writes the whole thing up. A full LaTeX manuscript with abstract, methodology, results, and citations. It generates the figures too. Then something interesting happens. A separate vision model scans each figure and flags problems, things like missing axis labels or legends that don't make sense. The system fixes them, the vision model reviews again, and this loop repeats until the figures pass. The output is a complete, formatted paper ready for submission. So here's the scorecard. 3 papers went to the ICLR 2025 workshop. 1 was accepted with a score of 6.33. 2 were not. But some important context. This particular workshop focuses on negative results, things that didn't work, which is arguably easier to write convincingly. Workshop acceptance rates tend to be much higher than the main conference. ICLR's main track accepted about 32%. Sakana's own team said none of the 3 papers met their internal bar for the main track. So this is real, but let's keep it in perspective. and there are real limitations. An independent evaluation of the earlier version found serious problems. Generated papers had a median of 5 citations, and most of those were outdated. The system sometimes hallucinated numbers, putting fabricated data into the results. About 40% of experiments failed due to coding errors, and in one case, an experiment designed to reduce energy consumption actually reported using more compute, completely contradicting its own goal. Even Sakana acknowledged the system produces naive ideas and struggles with deep methodological rigor, but the system also reviews its own work. 5 independent AI reviewers each score the paper separately. An automated area chair aggregates the reviews and makes a final call. Accept or reject. They benchmarked this reviewer against thousands of real human decisions. It matched human accuracy. Its agreement score actually exceeded what human reviewers achieve with each other, which makes sense when you remember that human reviewers already disagree about a quarter of the time. The system isn't perfect, but it has a built-in quality check. Think of where things stand right now as base camp on a mountain. Real progress, but a long way from the summit. But here's why I think this matters more than the limitations suggest. Right now, scientific research is concentrated. A handful of elite universities and a handful of wealthy countries produce most of the world's published science. You need funding, institutional backing, and years of training just to get started. Most of the world doesn't have access to any of that. What happens when the barrier drops? What if a student in Nairobi or Jakarta could run the full research pipeline on a laptop for the cost of lunch? Not producing Nobel Prize work, but generating real, peer-reviewed contributions to their field. Exploring questions that nobody at Stanford or Oxford would ever think to ask because they're not living that reality. Look at the trajectory. Version 1, released in August 2024, couldn't even leave a human-written template. It was rigid and narrow. Version 2 broke free, explored on its own through tree search, and produced a paper that cleared peer review at a real conference workshop. The research behind the system was then published in Nature. That progression happened in under 2 years. A PhD takes 5 to 7 years and costs hundreds of thousands of dollars. This costs about $15 to $20 per run. It's not better than the best human researchers. It doesn't need to be. Picture 1,000 of these running in parallel, each exploring a different question, each costing pocket change. The question isn't whether AI replaces scientists. It's what happens to science when exploration becomes almost free.